The following was recorded during the COVID-19 pandemic through Zoom meetings in accordance with local health guidelines. Hi, I'm Mike Maloney, and welcome to another CSRM podcast. Today's episode is hosted by Dr. Greg Linville.
Welcome back. We're talking about Overwhelming Victory Radio. This is the CSRM podcast, and we've had a series on how we're expanding and transitioning into a lot of new territory. And we're with a single-hearted goal of equipping you, the local church sports rec fitness minister, to be able to better accomplish your goals, your Great Commission goals, of reaching those who are far from Jesus and his church. So this is, what is it now? We've covered already the marriage mentoring with Dwight and Angela. We've covered we don't know what we're calling our old seasoned guys, and they're helping us with lessons that come out of their many years of experience. We talked about the Tuesday talks and how we're engaging in live conversations once a month on various topics. And now we come down to a thing that we call Ministry Misfits. Andrew, you have pioneered this Ministry Misfits along with Overwhelming Victory Radio. Explain Ministry Misfits.
Yeah, so with OVR, we've discovered we're able to kind of broaden what people think about when they think about CSRM from just, oh, they can help us with our league, to, oh, they can help me with my personal ministry development as well. And, we saw that with Dwight and Angela. They're able to help us in our marriages. They're able to help us in our day-to-day mentorship relationships. We've seen that with the CSRM podcast, where we're able to just show people the resourcing that's out there. We're able to show, introduce new ideas. Like when we had, my favorite still is the Taekwondo ministry guys that we've had on. We're going to be able to go, and don't take no offense, David and John, we're able to go to the other end of the spectrum and look at, what the other end of the career looks like as far as getting closer to the finishing point. I said closer, not at the finishing point. Don't stare at me, John. With the Tuesday talks, we're able to provide more of a face-to-face interaction that's covering more current event type stuff, current things that are going on. The Ministry Misfit podcast has kind of come out as a combination between all of these things to be able to talk to the younger minister, the up and coming minister, or these ministers that kind of feel like they're just kind of out of place in ministry. This is something that is becoming more common. We're hearing a lot about ministers that just feel like they kind of don't fit that church culture mold. This is a lot more common within the sports ministry world than it is even in the other areas of ministry, because we're walking into the gym, what on Sunday was a sanctuary, we're now walking on Monday in gym shorts and a t-shirt. These sort of things where we don't really, it can be very lonely and isolating. We don't necessarily know exactly where we fit. Some of these current event things that come up, we're kind of stuck in between, the two disconnects of, we're already in the church and trying to bring people in, but the people that we're ministering to are out in the street. And so we've got different worldviews clashing. How do we actually navigate this stuff? And so that's what the Ministry Misfits podcast has kind of come out of, is how do we find our place again? And we're doing that through the 3-tier model, the 3-tier paradigm that we have here within Overwhelming Victory, of we want to pull out theological truths out of these situations and then go from these theological truths into thinking about how this affects us in our personal ministry, and then hopefully then we can then take it and apply it to what we're doing actually day to day, both personally and in our ministries. So this is this is one that we may cover some more controversial topics. um we may talk about some more personal things than in some of the others, but all of it is wrapped around allowing you as the sports minister to be able to kind of rejuvenate your calling and find that place again where you can say, oh yeah, this is where God has put me and this is why.
There was a time in which, if you were in ministry, you had to stand up in a pulpit once a week and preach and maybe teach in a Christian education hour. And what we've come to understand is that not everybody is that Barnabas or Paul. Some of us are John Marks, who we're not that missionary, we're not that ministry. But Mark wrote a lot of the New Testament, and that was more of his ministry. So the misfit concept is part of what we're hoping to communicate, that we want to affirm your call as a sports minister. We want to encourage and support your call as that fitness director in your church. That no matter what recreational program you might be leading, that this is a high calling of God. Dan, I want to ask you, as a kind of the you're on deck. Dave's in up the bat, but you're on deck. You're going to be hitting soon as the executive director. And I know you have some vision even for the small church, and you have even a vision for some roundtables that could happen regionally around the world even. And this concept of how do you see this ministry misfit, and how can we encourage these local people in these various ways? Your perspective as a future executive director.
Yeah, I think this is a very important podcast and topic, because I just actually had a CSRM phone call 2 days ago with a guy in California who's just processing that call. He's at a church that's growing like crazy. They're a good medium-sized church. They've got property. They're in California. He loves beach volleyball, and he wants to use that to reach people. But he's not on church staff, and he didn't go to Bible college. And so we talked about how CSRM, of course, could help him with some of that. But he's even at the point, he's like, I'd like to even join staff as one of their janitors, just so I could be on staff, because I feel called to this. And so you're exactly right. Very traditionally, we've created something within church culture that you're only valuable if you're a public speaker, and you're only valuable if you're a good public speaker, right? Because then you get the opportunities, you get that platform. There's nothing wrong with preaching. We need that. And sometimes as sports minister, you may be tapped on the shoulder to fill a pulpit, and maybe you do have some of those skills, but maybe you don't have those skills. But if you have a calling upon your life, this podcast is for you. If it feels like, well, it's Wednesday and the senior pastor has staff meeting at 9, but I have leagues that are running until 9 or 10. So I'm there 12, 13 hours and I'm exhausted and I don't know where my fit is. This podcast is for you. And I would even say at a broader level, Greg, to your question, CSRM is for you. We want to help you process that call. And sometimes it's a love for Jesus, it's a love for athletics, it's some experiences, and whatever we can do to keep you in ministry, to keep you in your local church, to keep you in some sort of network. Greg, you mentioned roundtables. Yeah, we've started that here locally where I live. We're hoping to expand that to get people around a table, hopefully in person as much as we can. With some of the pandemic things, hopefully beginning to change or be lifted. But we know the value of looking someone in the eye and saying, I understand, I've been there, and we want to help you stay in the game of ministry and find your fit. So Andrew, I love what you're doing. I think it fits the overall vision of CSRM. If we could boil it down, we're about relationships and resources, and that fits this podcast very, very well.
And that's what if I speak real quick into why even this is going into the CSRM Overwhelming Victory Radio thing, because I mean most most people know already, if you've known Greg or David Waddell for a while, that technology is a new thing within CSRM. You know, I'm the one that has had to kind of bring a lot of this in and the know-how into it. And so this is a podcast I could have gone off and just done by myself as a side thing, but we want this was something that we wanted to put into CSRM because of the fact that CSRM is a place for relationship building and for resources. You know, we have an extensive international network of people where, you know, I could jump on a plane and fly to Cape Town and know I've got a couch to stay on. You know, that's not something that outside of CSRM, you know, we're able to talk about. And so we also are wanting to be able to kind of, you know, remove the blinders away from the Americanized church a little bit and actually view what is it that is going on in the world. What does the universal church look like in all of this? You know, the interview that we've already released with Bradley, you know, he took his childhood in apartheid South Africa, and it was 100% applicable to what is going on in the current American church culture today. And so that kind of relationship between the international church and us is the other thing that we're hoping to be able to bring in through the ministry Misfits. And this is also a good segue, Greg, into some of these new things that we've got coming up within CSRM, involving our international brothers and sisters in the international church as well.
Yeah, we've got all this that we have done. We're got some stuff that is just beginning, and we have a few things that are coming in the future. And I'm going to turn to Dave and John in just a minute. I know that Dan had to leave us here for some family time that he had to get to, but we have been obviously birthed in America, CSRM, and so much of this local church sports ministry has been in the American church. But we know that this is a growing family throughout the world. And CSRM is also experiencing that growth. And we have somewhere north of 40 staff people around the world. And one of our core values is that it's indigenous leaders that are not Westerners transplanted. And we'll say, welcome back to our marriage mentor folks, Dwight and Angela. Glad you could join us back again. And we're kind of wrapping up on some of the things that we're talking about here with our ministry Misfits podcast. The staff around the world, there's a lot of similarities. And so while maybe the church doesn't have a paid sports minister, they may not even have a paid senior minister, but they have these people playing those roles. And so that Tuesday talk, there can be some correlation there, and there can be some things to learn, but there's also some differences. And so we're setting up our continental director of Africa, Bradley Barnes, and he is going to be taking a whole approach to this that is very similar to Tuesday Talks. I think he's talking about calling it Friday Forums, but it's going to be very similar, but it's going to be to an African perspective.
And it's also not even, you know, and just to chime in here, this is something that, you know, we've talked about a lot in the CSRM podcast. We've already talked about it on even the Ministry Misfit podcast as well. We've talked about it in the Tuesday Talks. Our international director, P.F. Myers, talks about it in his book, Life of the Shoe, of that we are always wanting to empower the local church, and that includes internationally. We want to empower the local people to be ministering to their community. Bradley's stuff that he's producing, honestly, I've already told him I probably won't be able to do any help with editing anything like that, because I probably won't be able to understand what's going on, because it may not even be in English. You know, we want to be able to see the local congregations be empowered And that
around the
includes
world.
international local congregations empowered. And however that means CSRM is able to be involved, whether it's through resources like what we've been talking about the past few weeks, or whether it's producing new resources in the native tongue, that wherever God is directing us, that's where we want to go.
That's right. And Dave and John, in your podcast, but also in what Dwight and Angela are doing, what Dan's doing, what we're all doing, and particularly in this ministry, Misfits, there's a sense in which we're trying to empower the next generation. Now we've been seasoned each other, but the three of us are, well, I describe it as we're not riding into the sunset, but our horses are facing west. And there's got to be a new generation of new leaders. And that's what we're hoping that this ministry, Misfits, and others can do. Your thoughts about that, passing it on to the next generation?
I tell my students all the time, one of the greatest joys in teaching and creating tomorrow's leaders is the fact that people like me are getting out of the field and people like them are getting into it. I think the better days are ahead of us. There is a wealth of young talent. I see it at the Reach Gathering workshops when I go there. I meet some other faculty that are teaching Christian sports and recreation, and it just excites me to see what's going to be happening. And so I think anything we do in any of our podcasts, whether it's helping their marriage, helping them become a better mentor, helping them see that they fit into the pattern of how God is moving in helping the local church in establishing sports and recreation ministries. It's a valuable service.
Yeah, and I would add, as a recipient through the years of a number of people who have believed in me, invested in me, equipped me to serve, I know how valuable that is. And so, I, like so many of you, want to be a part of doing that same thing for others, investing in them, believing in them, helping them believe in themselves, and showing them how they can make a difference in our world today. We have a responsibility to do that. And I think if we don't, we're not living up to all that we can and should be in the lives of these younger folks that are coming along and learning and growing and making a real difference in the communities they serve here and around the world.
There's one last Overwhelming Victory Radio that podcast we want to talk about that we're envisioning at this point, and it's called Cowtown Adventures. And this is something that will talk about the thin feather fur kind of ministry that you can have in your church. And also, this is the part, David, this is why you approved it as the executive director, because what do you do after you catch it, trap it, shoot it, whatever? You barbecue it. And so getting the barbecue bubbas out there on the grills, and this is something that local churches, I don't think, have really thought enough about. You have your festivals, you always have food, you have your big events, you always have food, and why not grab your barbecue bubbas and with recipes and how to do it and how do you get the equipment. And we're excited about that one. That's going to be, that may not be the mainstream, it may not be your league that you're doing, but it's a valuable ministry that can augment what you're doing. And so stay tuned for that. I'd like us to kind of go around the circle here and maybe have last words, but we're down to our last 5 minutes here on this podcast. But what are your hopes for CSRM's Overwhelming Victory Radio? And Dwight and Angela, Dwight is our current board chair. What's your hopes for Overwhelming Victory Radio? What's your dream?
Well, one, I'd like to add, put that in the context of when you first, they were just answering about kind of like moving out of the way, but still being there is the way John put it. to help those. And I'm a big believer that that we get to a place. I don't find anywhere where somebody just retired. They kind of refired. And so if you're refired to what your next area is, a lot of times they'll call me back to ask me, Coach, why don't you come out and coach the kids no more, or this, that, and the other. And it's not that I don't want to or need. It's not I don't need to. If we've done it right, sharing, building up the ministry and the mentees that we've had. And my wife and I have become coaches now. And so that helps us when we are able to train, give advice that can help them not deal with some of the stuff that we dealt with. And some things we want them to deal with, but we can advise them on it. And so when we get into Overwhelming Victory, the podcast part, it gives us a chance to be able to share and be in more places than one. People, I'm not a real big reader of the books. My wife is, but I am huge about podcasts or listening to a CD and so it helps us get around the world more that way. And so I just see Overwhelming Victory taking us further to help more people and to take sports ministers to and we just God has moved us in the spot of doing it from a marriage perspective as mentors, sports ministers that went through it and now are able to share. And I'll let my wife share on that.
I think that's good. Just being able to tap into a place where you can get information, and that's that you can take the information and then apply it to whatever you need to in their ministry. So that's going to be awesome for this radio. So
very good, very good. John, your last thoughts.
Good job.
CSRM, I think, as much or certainly more than any other organization I'm aware of, has done more and provides more resources to equip and encourage local sports, rec, and fitness leaders. And I think regardless of where any of us are in our ministry, regardless of how seasoned we may be, we would be making a mistake not to take advantage of the resources that CSRM provides to grow us, to equip us, to challenge us, to make us better at what we do to impact the world for Jesus.
David.
I think of the verse where Paul said, I have become all things to all men that I might win some. When I think of Overwhelming Victory Radio, it's just another tool. It's another way of taking care of things. We know that some people learn by listening, some by reading, some by watching. And so I applaud this organization and for the vision of our resource department, you, Greg, you, Andrew, Bill Love, those that work with this process of just creating different venues and ways of teaching and of equipping local churches. And that's the value I find in OVR.
Very good. Andrew, last thoughts.
We're hoping that this is going to be beneficial, or as, we using the fourfold, terms, we're hoping that this is strategic. We're hoping that this is relevant to you and that we're being efficiently effective within, the ministries of those that are listening to us, that are watching us. One other side note is that, we're not done growing. If you have, a podcast that kind of meets these visions we're talking about, you have information that you want to be able to help other sports ministers with. Maybe you already have a podcast up and running and you just would like to share it with us. Contact us. If you go to the Overwhelming Victory, overwhelmingvictory.org, click on the radio tab. There's a place there to get all the information as far as how to start the process to join OVR. We love to see what other people have. We love to be able to take resources that are out there and just share it with people for them to be able to grab onto it and apply it to what they're doing.
And take that to heart. If you've got a vision for this, part of what we are envisioning with the OVR, the Overwhelming Victory Radio, is to equip and empower you to do this kind of ministry, even in your own setting. So please do make yourselves known to us. I want to thank each one of you. I know you've been diligent to be with us through these various recordings of this. And we just are hoping and praying that everything that we're doing right now is going to empower you, the local church, sports, rec, fitness minister, to be able to do a better job of going and reaching those people that today Jesus is not their Savior. Your church is not their church. But that because of what you're picking up from OVR, from the Overwhelming Victory Flix, from the Overwhelming Victory, all the books, press, the Overwhelming Victory Press, that you would be able to gain some things that can help you to be a better you, a better sports, rec, and fitness minister that reaches those far from Jesus. So, thanks for joining us, and that's it for this edition of the CSRM podcast. Bye now.
The CSRM podcast is a production of the Association of Church Sports and Recreation Ministers and their video production house, Overwhelming Victory Flix. Dr. Greg Linville is the executive producer, and Andrew Fouts is associate producer and editor. For more information about CSRM, visit csrm.org. For more information about Overwhelming Victory, visit overwhelmingvictory.org. The CSRM podcast is the flagship member of a new podcast network called Overwhelming Victory Radio. For more information on Overwhelming Victory Radio or to listen to our partner podcasts, visit overwhelmingvictory.org/OVRadio. For CSRM Podcasts, I'm Mike Maloney. Have a blessed day.